Can you remember what it was like in the old school when you were young?
Yes, I can remember fairly well, yes. It was very country, big country room, and it was one big room with a curtain in between for the smaller children, and the bigger children in the other class. There was 2 teachers, and Mrs. Solace, I can't remember if it was spelled, I think it was Solace, and a Miss Jenner, and she came from London, and she was a very keen teacher to teach us English, and she taught us all our country talk. We were able to talk much nicer after she'd been there sometime, because she used to, the thing that she was so very keen on was English. She wanted us to speak the King's English, you see. And we had, she was very, very strict on our speech, so that we did all speak better, you know, afterward, but not so much in the country way. That was one thing.
Were they very strict when you were...
Oh yes, you just have the cane, and I used to get into trouble because we used to have nature walks, and I used to go off and when we got out with one of my mates and not come back with the teachers, and when we got back the school was over and I was to get the cane the next day. I remember that. It was so lovely in the country when you once got out for these nature walks, you see. We used to go off. Naughty. I was a naughty little girl. Yes, we had, and we used to have gardens all around the school, and we used to have to tend them, a piece each, you know, of gardening. And that's how we taught. We didn't have any extra teachers or anything, just the one teacher. You had to do the best you could, and the ones for the small ones, you see, the little children, they had lovely dolls and things all dressed in beautiful clothes to play with, the smaller children did. And lots of things, I remember that. And we had a great big open fire with a guard round it. In those days, that was the only, and the bells we had to pull with a chain, with a rope. I think it's still, well, they used to be still there. I suppose they are.
The clock's still there.
Is it? The old clock, the big clock, yes. And the porch where we put all our clothes.
Of course, it was all, there wasn't many cars about then at all, was there, when you were at school, I suppose? Wasn't that many cars in the village at all, was there?
No, well, there was quite a few, yes. Yes, surprising, because the family farmers, and they had 2 or 3 children. Most families had a little family, you know, most couples. There was quite a few there. I should think there was perhaps about 30, between 30 and 40 in our class, in the top class. And the other, and then the little ones, I should think about 30ish. There's quite a few children, because there was more cottages, because a lot of them had been pulled down.
And I suppose most people who lived in the village worked in that area. They didn't go far, did they?
No, not.
They worked on the farms.
People didn't have cars and that, you see, then, and they didn't go out to work, mostly on the farm, up on the downs, and the race horses, you see, that made most of the work there. There was about 4 stables, 4 racing stables, and because my dad was in the racing.
And I suppose the cress beds was kept going then.
Oh, they were beautiful, yes, not like they are now. It was big. There was loads of cress, and it used to look like a big green. It looks ever so small now to what it used to look, you know.
Yeah.
They were beautiful cress beds they used to be. We used to go through the tunnel under the road and crawl through the tunnel to the other side.
Oh, we used to do that, yeah.
You did it. Yes, I wouldn't like to think of doing it now. My goodness, I don't know how we did that. We had to go through the other side. Yeah. Trying to think of anything else.
Was Mr. Churchill a blacksmith?
Yes, he was the blacksmith of the village. He used to walk around in his big leather apron. I can see him now walking along. And Ben Churchill, yes, and she kept the little shop where Granny and where your mother lived at one time, where we lived. That little cottage down there was a shop where Granny lived, and we lived for a time. But they altered it just to houses afterwards, and there was a little shop where she sold sweets and little odds and ends, you know. And then later on they built a bigger shop, like a bungalow shop up from the other end of the village up towards the knoll there.
Yeah.
And well, it's still there, I expect, yes. Mrs. Pike kept that, and Mrs. Pike, that was later on, of course, was when I was growing up. And but at that time when I was little, there was only that one little tiny shop there. We had to go to Letcombe Regis, and we always used to be at loggerheads with the Letcombe Regis children. They used to meet us, and then they used to start chasing us with the water, with the cans, and dipping them in the water and throwing the water on us. We used to be scared to go down. We had to go down to the shop sometimes. Our bakers lived down there. Mr. Lawrence, the baker, used to come round with bread, and he lived at Regis, so we had to go down there sometimes to order bread and stuff. That was a problem when we had to go down there. We were always a bit scared we were going to get set on, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're all friends together,
Yeah.
but you see, it wasn't. There was always that between the two villages in those days. Only the children. I don't mean the people.
What did you do to keep yourselves amused when you were younger, when you were children?
Oh, we used to play fox and hounds, and moonlight nights we used to go miles round. They'd be scared stiff to do it now. We used to play fox hunting, and hide was a couple would go off and hide, and then we always used to go to find them, you see. Because it was in the broad moonlight, it was like this day in the kitchen, in the country right now. It's just like daylight when the moonlight was on.
I don't think kids would think to do that today, would
Oh,
they?
we used to have great fun, and then in the winter we had these great big slides all down the slopes, and there was one little old lady lived up the hill, and she used to come down, put ashes all on her slides, because she was frightened somebody would get hurt, you see.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, we coped like that. We had lots of fun, and we used to have a good swinging in the middle of the village. We used to get a great big rope and have skipping, you see, or all used to go in skipping. Things like that, and fox and hounds we used to play. We kept ourselves amused, and then on bonfire night we always had a great big fire. We used to go and get wood from all over the place and build a great big fire up on the knoll there, and have lots of fun like that. That's how we amused ourselves. Honestly, I think we had more fun than the children do today with all the televisions and things. I think we enjoyed it.
Do you remember first having a gramophone?
Yes, there was one lady had one up in the cottages near the church, and she had the first gramophone. And everybody went up to listen to it, you know. And of course when that came along, that was another big thing. They used to go and all the crowd used to go out and sit and listen, you see. Now we had a gramophone with a big horn, I remember, yes. Yes, and that was so we always had dogs and cats and chickens. And,
Were they expensive in them days? I wonder how you could afford to have one, actually.
what the
Gramophones.
Well, I don't think they were all that expensive. I expect they had them so much a week, you know,
Oh,
like
yeah,
they do.
IHP, yeah.
Yeah, I expect they did. Don't think they were terribly expensive. Of course, when the wireless came in, that was different. But with the gramophones, I can seem to see ours now. It had a great big red horn. There was such a big horn they had on them.
I suppose you didn't have electric light until later on. You always had
we had
the oil
lamps.
lamps, didn't you?
Oil lamps, yes, and candles. And Aunt Dobby and I, we used to, if Granny had known, she'd have killed us. We used to sit up in bed when she'd put us to bed with a candle on the bed, reading on the bed, candle on the bed. And then I'd have a fit myself, you know.
It's ones you didn't do your eyes in.
Well, when we had Granny had come up, and of course she'd have walloped us, but of course we used to get the old candle and sit up there and read her books. And one night we saw a ghost, and I'm sure I saw it. No, that's true. And I still believe it to this day, and so do Auntie Doll when she was in her right mind. She could remember. It was a man in armour in the old uniform that they used to wear in the old days. and he stood in, it was a cottage, there was a bedroom with just a big open doorway like that, there wasn't a proper door to it, and there was a big room where Granny and Grandad sat, and then there was another room, where there was room for 3 beds in there, and Uncle Archie slept in one, but he wasn't at home at that time when we saw the ghost, and Auntie Dobby and I slept in there. Well, this night we were laying there, and all of a sudden this ghost appeared in the doorway, and I'm sure it's true, my dear, although I'm old now and I could laugh at it, but it's true. I can see that figure now, a man in armour, how they used to wear the old armour that we saw in the books and that. And we both saw it, and Auntie Dobby would have told you the same when she was well, that we saw this ghost, and we screamed out, and Granny came up, and of course she thought we were playing up, but really and truly we did see something. I reckon it was, if there are such things, that wasn't ghost that we saw. It's just stood in the doorway all in its armour, and I didn't know, I'd never seen any armour, only in books, so I mean it was something that really, I'm sure it happened. I'm sure there was a ghost there.
Yeah. You never heard of anybody seeing it since?
No, never heard anybody else ever saying it. Must have been some special night or something, and we were up there and we looked up and we saw this, and the door and all at once vanished, you know.
Oh, but the chapel must have been going well then, wasn't it, by the little chapel?
Oh yeah, the little chapel, we used to go to that, and we used to have open air meetings a lot in the summer, and they used to give us a picnic once a year, and we used to have to walk from Letcombe Bassett all the way down to Letcombe Regis and all up fields into Challow to this tea party for donuts and cups of tea, you know. That's all we used to get. That was a Christmas, that was a, not Christmas, a summer tea party. We used to have that. A man called Mr. Norris used to come from Challow and teach us then. We used to have all different preachers, because Granny was chapel, you see. She used to clean the chapel and help the old lady, Mrs. Frood up the top, used to look after the chapel, and she used to give Granny about £half to keep it clean, you know. And it was a nice chapel then, because Grandad Shrimpton, that was Granny's father, he was a carpenter, and he did the pulpit and all. It was beautifully made, and all lovely wood, you know, that really smashing it was. You know what it's like now, because it's made into a garage, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a garage.
Yes, it was all lovely wood, all stained beautiful. And the pulpit and everything was made beautiful. He did all that. But I didn't know him because he was dead before I was born, I think. Well, I don't know whether he was before I was born, I can't remember, but I never saw any of my grandparents. They were all, I was the last one. They were dead when I was little, but Mum used to tell us the stories, how he did everything, you know, like that, did all this.
Well, how did you get to town in those days then, to Wantage?
Well, they used to have had the buses in after a long time, but it wasn't buses, of course, when I was very small. We used to have to go in a horse and trap, and there was a man at Letcombe Regis used to let out horse and traps if we wanted to go to the train to meet anybody or wanted to go to Wantage. Little buggies, you know, little traps.
Oh yeah.
Paid them about 5 shillings or something to take you there and back, you see. And Grandad, my dad, he could drive, because he was used to horses, he didn't have to have a driver, he could hire the trap, and we used to go in this little round buggy. We used to go and meet Auntie Vi when she came from her job on the train. We used to go to the railway station, we'd have this trap, and we used to think that was a real thrill to go all the way to the Wantage station on this trap. It was lovely. Yeah. And it was always, I was trying to think of anything else I could tell you that was different. And of course the old mill house, you know where that is, that's still there, is it?
Yes, it's still there, yeah.
Well, we used to, that was empty for years and years when I was a little girl, about 8 or 9 or 10 perhaps, and we used to go down there and play in it, up and down the walls and jumping out of the windows onto the floor, and the river was just underneath it when we hadn't got drained. And one day we were pulling up the windowsills, bricks apart, and we found a newspaper cutting, and it was all about this woman that had drowned herself. Then there was a story that there was a ghost, you see, and we thought this, finding this paper with a account of it on about her committing suicide, we thought that it must be true about the ghost. So, well, you know, you are when you're that age, you think,
Yeah.
it made us lovely story of it. And there was something in it. Somebody put that paper in with the bricks.
Good God.
Yeah, we found it, and we used to jump out of the window down onto the floor from the bedroom.
Was there ever a laundry down there?
Pardon?
A laundry or not?
No.
There's supposed to be.
I expect there has been since, probably, but not then, not in those days, no.